Welcome to the Geterbrewed channel. So today we've got a real treat for you. We're at JW Lees Brewery in Manchester, one of the 4 family breweries left. It's a beautiful brew house and it's really worth checking out. You're going to really enjoy this little feature. Come on in and check it out.
Yeah, so, hi, I'm Michael Lees-Jones. I'm production director here at JW Lees, 6th generation member of the family, and I'm going to give a quick tour around our wonderful place.
Lovely, Michael. So this is malt intake?
Yep, so this is the malt intake. So all the bulk malt that comes in here comes through in here and through a series of conveyors into our silos, which are behind the wall behind us.
Yeah.
So should we go and have a look?
Yeah, cool. Michael, take us through what happens here.
So this is the malt handling panel. So we've got all our bulk malt comes in through here, through the malt intake, which you've just seen outside,
Yeah.
through the conveyors into the silos. We have 2 silos for ale malt and 2 for lager malt.
Yeah.
And we only fill them when they're empty to make sure we get proper stock rotation. When we decide what we're brewing on the next day, we'll then start the mill going to crush our malt for the next brew.
Yeah.
There's a slide laper at the bottom, through the conveyors, through a weigher, a sack tip position there, so we can add any sack malt or different things we might want to add to the brew.
Yeah.
Through the screen, through the mill, which we'll see in a minute, and
Yeah.
down into the grist case.
Okay. Cool. On to the next stage.
On we go.
So this is a bobby mill, and I know these are exceptional pieces of engineering because you can't get them anymore, and they never really break down either. It's probably
This is it's a baby mill. It dates back to about the 1920s.
yeah.
Came out of a distillery in Scotland. We put it in place here in 1994.
Yeah.
The old mill that was in here was taken out by the Museum of Science and Industry in Manchester,
Yeah.
and they're sitting in storage there for them somewhere. But these are just phenomenal bits of kit.
Yeah.
As with everything from the 1920s, 1930s, yeah, they were built to last.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it does. It lasts, and it does a perfect job for what we want. So the malt comes in at the top, is gently cracked all the way down as it goes through 2 sets of rollers, and then goes off through the wooden clad system and through into the grist case,
Yeah.
ready for us to mash the next morning.
So the grist case is above the Lauter mash, and then
We've got both the Lauter Tun and the mash tun, yes.
Yeah.
It sits above there, steel's masher underneath, and we can go either way then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's check out the next stage. So Michael, this is where historically there's a cool ship because you can see where the air can get in.
Yeah, this was a fantastic old building. So the old cool ship was there to cool down the wort after it had been boiled up in a kettle. So the whole of this room, the whole length of it, was basically a big open copper tray.
Yeah.
Apart from the corner here, actually, which used to have the hop back in.
Yeah.
So we drop everything out into the hop back here,
Yeah.
and then onto the cool ship before going down into the fermentation vessels. These louvers just created a really great airflow over it, just to help it cool down.
Yeah. And you've now turned that into a lab.
So it's now the lab and a few meeting rooms, but
Yeah.
we need the lab to make sure the beer's as it should be.
Yeah.
You can have a quick look if you want.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, so quality and consistency is obviously pivotal to what you do here. So you need this setup in here to.
Yep, so we've got the lab here because every beer that we send out, we need to be absolutely spot on quality. We need it to be exactly what the customer wants and what we want it to be as well. So we've got the lab here, so we can do all the microbiological analysis, we can do all the chemical analysis as well, make sure it's got the right amount of gas, got the right amount of yeast, bitterness is right, colour's right, and just make sure everything's spot on. So every time our customer asks for a pint, he gets a perfect one.
Okay, Michael, we're now in the mash area. So you have a mash and a loiter.
Yep, so we've got 2 ways to produce our work. We've got a traditional single temperature infusion mash tun, which is what we're here looking at here. So again, it's a 200 barrel brew length, down to 100. The weight is fantastic. It works really well with proper, well-modified UK malts.
Yeah.
They're absolutely superb. We put in a Lauter Tun in about 2006 to be able to brew more continental lagers, and we'll have a look at that.
Lovely. Michael, you've mash and a Lauter. The Lauter's more for your lagers, is that fair to say? Or do you use both for both? Or?
We use both for both. So we've got the mash tun and we've got the Lauter system as well. So I'm leaning here against the mash conversion vessel.
Yeah.
And then we got the Lauter Tun as well.
Okay.
The two vessels do the same as the one.
Okay.
But the great thing is with the Lauter Tun you can change the mash temperature. So the steam coil's on the bottom of it.
Okay.
And you can mash at a lower temperature and then slowly raise the temperature, getting other enzymes active to change the starches into sugars.
Yeah.
So if you have less well modified malt, you can deal with issues. So you've got a bad growing season.
Yeah.
You can use different temperatures to be able to get more extract out of that.
Yeah.
To be able to get the full flavour you want to get in the beer at the end.
Yeah.
They both work really, really well.
Yeah.
And it's just great investment we've had here.
Yeah. Yeah. Lovely. Okay, Michael, we're up. Beautiful piece of copper engineering in front of us, and obviously this is where the coppers are at. So if somebody doesn't know what coppers is, it's basically the kettles and part of the brewing process.
That's right, it's a work kettle. They used to be made out of copper.
Yeah.
That's why they're called coppers. So this is the old copper coil.
Yeah.
Taken out of the coppers that we had up here. I'm using the word copper a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was a lot of copper involved.
Yeah.
So it's taken out, it's the old copper coil, came out of the old mash kettle, or work kettle rather.
Yeah.
And what used to happen was you'd put steam around the coils.
Yeah.
That would start everything to boiling. This is inside the vessel. And so everything will start boiling and go up the inside of the chimney, hit the underside of the Chinaman's hat, and you get a good rolling boil.
Yeah.
To try and extract as much of that bitterness and aroma out of the hops as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is the stage at which we're trying to get the bitterness aroma out, so create these wonderful flavours that we get in our beers.
Yeah. You've two either side here. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got two coppers, not made of copper anymore, but we've got two. The brew length's about 200 barrels in either one.
Okay.
We can tone it down to 100 barrels.
Yeah.
So everything that we brew from our main plant comes through here, through one or the other. We've got two work production things downstairs. We've got the Lauter Tun and the mash tun, the two coppers, and then everything goes into one line after that. It means we've got lots of flexibility in case of breakdowns or anything halfway through a brewing day.
Yeah. And this is where everybody wants to get their picture taken.
It's a lovely old bit of lovely bit of sort of memorabilia, I suppose. It's absolutely fantastic. It looks wonderful, and it's right here at the top. So you've got a lot of stairs to get up before you get here, but it's fantastic when you do.
Worth it. Worth it. Yeah. Cool. Michael, I'm petrified of heights, so really quickly take us through where we are.
So we're now at the top of the brewery. This is the highest we get. So we've come up here so we can basically see the site and see where the brewery is.
Yeah.
So if you look behind you there, you turn around and look at the sort of highway up a little bit. You can see Manchester's right the way down there, and you can see Beaton Tower far in the distance.
Yeah.
If you look over to your right, you can see Oldham.
Yeah.
Where there's still quite a few chimneys and mills.
Yeah.
From the old days. And if we go to the left there, then you've got Rochdale over there as well.
Yeah.
So the site here was right in the middle of the Industrial Revolution. You had the Middleton Junction Station, which is the area we're in, right next door, and that's where the trains from Rochdale, Oldham, Manchester all met together.
Yeah.
So it was really quite an important area at the time.
So it made sense to have a brewery here from a
geographical
point
of view. The building behind you down below that's the original brew house that was built by John Lees in 1828, or the row of cottages he bought in 1828.
Yeah.
To do that before this new brew house was built in 1876.
Yeah.
So it was, it's ready for thirsty workers.
Yeah. Cool.
Let's go.
Let's go. Let's get back down to
the
solid ground. Yeah. Michael, take us through. We're in the fermentation room.
Yeah, this is the fermentation room. This is where we do all the ales.
Yeah.
So all our ales are brewed inside the building here with our ale yeast.
Yeah.
Ale yeast we've used about 5,500 generations now.
Yeah.
We did have a big 5,000th birthday party for it a few years ago. And that was one of the challenges of COVID, was actually keeping the yeast going.
Yeah.
Because we've been continually rebrewing with it. the one thing that adds character to our beer that is uniquely ours is our yeast. So even during COVID, during the lockdowns, we were still coming in to brew every now and again just to keep the yeast alive, to keep it going.
Yeah.
So this is the fermentation room. We've got 5 200-barrel vessels and 4 100-barrel vessels in here.
Yeah.
And anything of our main brands and seasonal beers comes through here. That's what we're doing, that one.
Yeah.
We use top fermenting yeast, and that's where it is. It's a really fantastic place to be.
Yeah, there's a lovely aroma. You know, obviously fermentation's finished at this stage and you can see the blanket of yeast, but the aroma's lovely.
Is that some of the seasonal beers will dry hop as well, and then when we start doing that and the late hop beers, you really get some fantastic aromas coming off.
Yeah.
Just ignoring the carbon dioxide that's coming off as well. But but there's some absolutely superb aromas. It smells like home. Whenever you come in here, it's like you feel you're back home again. It's just a lovely, comforting smell.
Yeah. Cool.
That's outside, yeah. So this is all new floor.
Yeah.
New office.
So we're under the huge lager tanks here. There's a lot goes on in this building. So.
Yep. So this is what we call the tank room. So we're standing underneath 4 of the lager fermentation vessels. So we keep all the lager yeast outside the building we were in a minute ago.
Yeah.
So that's all now out here. So they're dual purpose vessels, so we ferment and mature in those as well.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that, further on down the room, you've got the filters, the carbonators and the bright beer tanks. So we can check the beer at every stage right the way down before it goes off to be sort of either a keg beer or bottled beers. That's it, yep.
You deliberately keep ale and lager separated, is that because you want to keep the thumbprint of your ale yeasts?
The one thing that fills me with dread, that gives me sleepless nights, is our ale yeast and our lager yeast. The ale yeast we've been doing over 5,000 generations. It's what gives the beer its character. It's what we've got. I can't get any other yeast in that. I can't get it infected. Can't do anything with it. It's got to remain our ale yeast.
Okay.
So actually the pipe comes through the building, but it's easier for us all to imagine that building, that wall is the barrier for the yeast and it's not allowed past it.
Okay.
And so we can keep the lager yeast very separate to the ale yeast. And then with the Boilerhouse, which we'll have a look at later, we've got, we're away from the main brewery, different drains, different everything else, and we can make sure that all that yeast or anything else we use up there is kept separate, and so it doesn't come down to the main drain underneath the brew house, it joins the drain further on down. Yeah. So we just need to make sure it's right. I just want to keep it special.
Keep it special, yeah. Cool, so we understand.
I'm going left here. Right.
Michael, take us through, we just walked through one of your packaging areas, so this is keg beer.
Yep, so that's keg beer, so that's where we package all our keg beers, so our 3 lagers that we do and our smooth beers as well. So we can package about 40 to 50 barrels an hour in numerous different sizes from 30 litres up to 100 litres and all the sizes in between, so kills and firkins as well.
Yeah.
It's a really great bit of plant, it's all automated and we like using it. It's 50% of our trade now.
Yeah, and you don't do packaged goods for, independent off sales or supermarkets or anything like that. You don't do
we do a small amount of bottled beers, but that's mostly just Moonraker or Harvest Ale.
Okay.
So we send Harvest Ale off to get bottled, but we send that off elsewhere to be done.
Yeah.
And the Harvest Ale is a really special product. It's 11%, but it's quite expensive with the UK duty laws.
Yeah.
But it's very nice and goes down very well over in America.
Yeah.
Fantastic beer.
You don't want a keg of it, that's what you're saying.
It'd be too expensive.
So we're bringing another Matt into the video here for chat. You're very welcome. Thanks for your time. So you run the brews in the Boilerhouse?
That's correct, yeah. So I do pretty much all the brewing over here in the Boilerhouse, as well as on the big plant as well.
Right, okay.
So quite a lot.
How do you approach the versatile styles and given the doing something new every week?
A lot of experience drinking. I'll say that. You got to understand all the different beers, but brewing is pretty much the same process.
Yeah.
No matter what you're brewing, it all depends on what you're adding to it.
Yeah.
As long as I don't take a sour yeast over into the main plant and ruin our generation,
Yeah.
then I'm safe.
You can do whatever you want to.
Exactly.
Yeah. And doing a different beer every week, is there any challenges with that?
Yeah, especially when you're brewing over here, over there. There's a lot of beer being produced, but it's great for me because I get to brew the traditional, our perfect range, and also the weird and wonderful stuff over here as well. So it's a great experience for me.
Yeah. You've gave me a sample. This is take us through what this is.
Yeah, so it is unfiltered at the moment. So it is raw from the fermentation vessel. It's our Munich Kettles, which we'll be releasing as part of our, one of our 4 this year. Well, we're doing 24 this year.
Yeah.
4 bi-monthly, so it's one of the 4 that's going to be released.
Yeah.
But I've got it nicely conditioning at the moment.
Yeah.
Just a classic, nice, easy drinking Munich Kettles lager.
Yeah.
And when it's filtered, be nice, crystal clear.
Yeah.
Super refreshing.
Yeah.
Nice and carbonated.
Yeah.
So it is flat at the moment, but hopefully it's all right. It doesn't taste too bad.
It's pretty good actually, and
Thank you.
for a breakfast beer, you know, it's enjoyable.
That's it, liquid breakfast. Can't go wrong, can you?
Yeah. Cheers. Today we are privileged to be in JW Lees. We're joined by Matthew Curtis, Michael and William from JW Lees. So William, tell us really quickly a little bit about JW Lees.
JW Lees is a 7th generation family brewery based here in Middleton, North Manchester, originally founded 1828.
Yeah.
The brew house that you're going around was rebuilt in 1876 by John Willie Lees, and Michael and I are from the 6th generation of the family. Myself as managing director, Michael as production director, and we've both worked here for over 20 years.
Yeah. It's something that's really important to ourselves, and Matt was highlighting this as well, that it's needed in the industry to keep the family brewers, you know. And I think as we're going into the new modern era of independent and craft brewing, and, you know, craft brewing's difficult. Use our craft brewers. Sorry, the term craft beer is difficult, but use our craft brewers at the end of the day. So, what do you see as the challenges for Cask Ale at the moment, and what do you see in the evolution of modern British beer?
I think that from a JW Lees perspective, we say that the brewery is very much the heart of the business. And so when someone walks into one of our pubs, the first thing that they'll see is a wicket of cask beers. And it's probably best for Michael to comment, because in an ideal world we'd have 5 or 6 different cask beers, but from a reality world probably 2 or 3 is more relevant. And certainly one of the things that we found coming back from lockdown is that cask drinkers were a bit slower to feel safe in pubs, and so we saw, you know, the growth of stouts, we saw the growth of lagers, and I think that cask beer is all about appreciating what's best of British beer, and certainly from a landlord's perspective it's more difficult to keep, and from a customer's perspective it's always been discounted compared to keg product, and so we have a premium quality product that's sold cheaply, perhaps too cheaply, and it'll be the best pint, worst pint that you'll ever get, depending on how it's been looked after by the Sullivan. But how do you see it, Michael?
I think you're right there. The one thing you can't buy anywhere else, apart from a pub, is cask beer.
Yeah.
So I think as long as there are pubs around us, cask beer has a relevance. As William says, it's a premium product, but if you charge it too premium pricing, then people ain't going to want to buy it, and you'll end up with poor quality beer because the sales won't be there. So I think what's important for us is to make sure that the beer stays relevant, that we innovate and see what we can do to bring more customers in to drink cask beer, so that people can appreciate how special it is, and put it at the forefront of everything that we do. So as William said, you go into the pubs, and any pub of ours, You go to, you'll see, the hand pumps as you come in. You don't have too many hand pumps. Quality's got to be paramount. And here at the brewery, we do 90% of the job for cask beer, and the licensee does the last 10%, which is the most important 10%, to make sure that beer is absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
So it's to maintain its relevance, it needs to be the quality right. It needs to be some innovation there. The drinks which people drink for years aren't necessarily going to be the ones they're going to continue to do.
Yeah.
Back in the 1970s, our Dark Mild was our top seller by quite a country mile.
Yeah.
Now it's sort of one of the smaller brands that we've got. That's moved on. The bitters are selling well at the moment, but again, our lager sales, which first started brewing in 1958, are increasing on top of that.
Yeah. So we touched on this just before the camera went on, but the Industrial Revolution, coal miners, the factory workers. This area was cotton, wasn't it?
Cotton was Manchester was the centre of the global cotton trade, which is why there's all these mills that are all over the city that are now flats and bars and that sort of thing.
But back then there was loads of thirsty factory workers and miners and whoever else in the area, in that period of time. How have you evolved to the IT sector and the banking sector and the student sector? Because you don't have the workers coming in at lunchtime for a few pints, and you don't have them coming in after work for another few pints. How have you handled that challenge as a group?
Really by a combination of diversification, brewing different types of beers, but fundamentally a quality standard that permeates everything that we do. One of the things that, like you say, we used to have quite a limited range, and by having a limited range in a strange sort of way, that improves the quality of your product. One of the things that personally I can't stand is hazy beers, because in my mind a beer needs to be bright.
You look at me when you say
you need to hold it up. Well, it's something that's almost become lazy, that the only hazy beer you used to get on a bar would be a pint of scrumpy, because it was an agricultural product. And so it's a bit naughty, but if you ever go into a bar and your pint's not quite right and you hold it up, everybody else will start holding up their pint as well. And so for me, it's a bit old-fashioned, it's a bit uncrafty, but I don't like hazy beers, for instance.
It can contribute to mouthfeel and flavour, though. That's one thing, and I get when the first trend started with hazy beers, there was people doing crazy things. They were putting flour in beer to get the haze. They were doing all sorts of madness, whereas I appreciate a bright beer and a cask beer, and I also appreciate some hazy beers that have got that nice pillowy, delicate mouthfeel that allows the hops to shine a little bit more. So I get it. My father's of the same opinion. He would. I don't know. He sort of says he likes to see the bright beer, but then, I've seen him drinking kettle sours and things in recent times, and I'm like, you can see trends change.
Well, I don't know if it's because I have lived in Manchester for a few years now, and I drink a lot more cask beer than I used to, just because the quality of cask beer, and I think the family brewers of Manchester have such an influence on this, is very high compared to much of the rest of the country. But because I drink more cask beer, I like bright beer. I want my beer to be clear, 99% of the time. I sometimes waver, but for me it tastes better, and I think you can still get a great mouthfeel from a clear beer. Mm-hmm. So we could talk about this for hours, though. What I'm interested in is, Manchester does have this fantastic hospitality scene. You have 140 pubs across the northwest, and now today I was showing Johnny and Hanan behind the camera there a handful of pubs, and we were in London the week before, and you noticed the jump in the quality as well, didn't you? Yeah. How influential do you think family brewers like JW Lees have been in creating a great culture and community of both beer and hospitality?
Well, Boddingtons were always the biggest family brewer in Manchester, and they're obviously not a family brewer anymore. But I think that in the same way that Camera was founded in Manchester, that sense of free trade and competition that, I very much respect what Joseph Holt's, what Frederick Robinson's, what Hyde's are doing. And by having 4 family brewers in the city, that it means there's competition, which is competition for who can brew the best pint, who can open the best pub, who can look after their colleagues the best. And so in my mind, competition is a good thing, and it's something that we've always had in Manchester in a way that perhaps we no longer have in London, for instance, with both Fuller's and Young's coming out of their brewery sites.
Indeed.
I think we can add to that as well. Is the foundations were put in by the family brewers right the way through in the 70s when we were still brewing cask beer, to get those pubs still running, to keep the hospitality sector where it is. So the foundations were put in for Manchester to come where it is to today, being right at the forefront of the craft scene as well. On top of the craft from the family brewers, you've got some everybody else. Because the foundations are solid, with everybody used to having top quality beer. You can then have the newer brewers coming in, and the bar's there, and everybody's sort of raised to that occasion to make sure everything's right. So I think by the foundations going back from to the 19th century, we've got those foundations in there to raise the game across the board in Manchester.
Yeah, I think it's like that now with the current crop of brewers. The standard of beer in Manchester is very high because it's a competitive city. You said, Johnny, you wouldn't like to open a brewery in Manchester.
No way, I want to open a brewery in Manchester. The bar is so high in quality, both from cask family brewers right through to the likes of Balance Brewery. The small guys that have just opened there recently. And I think it's a fantastic city with a great beer culture. We've a lot to learn from here. That's why we're putting a bit of a feature on different breweries to try and shine a light on it. And one thing I do want to highlight, and Michael, you mentioned this, your Boilerhouse. You have a small innovation brewery here, and you brewed 52 beers last year. So you aren't just making good cask ale on scale, but you're also innovating and putting out one-offs.
We've got our main permanent range, which is great, and the challenge for that is to make sure it tastes the same every single time, so that everybody gets an absolutely perfect pint. But we can't just keep brewing the same beers, and we need to innovate. Historically, back in the 90s, we started doing seasonal beers, so every 2 or 3 months we'd bring another new beer out. But then, just in about 2017, 2018, we put in a small 10-barrel brew plant, which is called the Boilerhouse. And that means that we can do different things. We can use different yeasts, which we never wanted to do before, because our yeast is sacrosanct, so we didn't want to mess that up. So we could use the different yeasts in there. So we've used some German Kolsch yeast, we've used some sour yeast, we've used sort of lots of different things over there. We can also use different raw materials. We can try and find out what's happening, and by being able to do that and learning how everything works, we can then see how we can get to the next beers and how we're going to move on, and we can innovate and make sure that we remain relevant to the beer and brewing and pub scene.
Yeah.
Speaking of your yeast, one thing you've done is you've done a few collaborations with Cloudwater. How did that come about?
We spoke to Paul Jones a long time ago, and this is when we first wanted to do our first collaboration. And we did a beer called Red Ale, which was phenomenally good, with the most amazing amount of hops we've ever had. And so we spoke to Paul a lot, and one of the reasons we wanted to work with us is he loved our Harvest Ale, which is our sort of 11% barley wine that we do every single year and declare a vintage on, and it's just absolutely wonderful. And so he wanted to do something similar, so we said, can we use some of your yeast? And so we've had a relationship going backwards and forwards with Cloudwater since then, and they really are. They're a brewery which I think sort of do some really interesting things. Never brew the same beer twice, and we did that in the Boilerhouse last year with 52 different ones, which we're turning back a bit this time. But it's great to talk to other brewers, to learn what other people are doing, to we don't know everything, we never pretend to, but to learn from people like Lauter is absolutely fantastic. And so we do it every now and again. We're planning to do a few collaborations again this year, and we just learn more, and it's great to talk beer with beery people as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think on that when we first saw new breweries, I don't like the word craft either, but when we saw new breweries opening in Greater Manchester, and I remember meeting Paul and others and just saying, look, if you ever want to come into the brewery, if you ever want to use our laboratory, if you ever want to do this, why don't we be friends rather than competitors? And I think that you get into sort of rivalries. We would never do anything anti-commercial, but at the same time, I remember when, for instance, we didn't have our own laboratory, so to speak, and it was a bit of a lottery, because if we ever had a problem, frankly, by the time we knew what the problem was, all the beer had gone anyway, so it was a complete waste of time. And so you invest in these facilities and think, well, actually, in a modern world, you can go on the internet, you can find anything out, or you can actually talk to each other. And so by saying to other brewers, come and talk to us, why don't we work together, I think that collectively, like you say, you can actually improve the average quality of a pint and a pub in Greater Manchester.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch on is the obviously the news come out today, we're in recession, and the back of COVID, cost of living crisis. Has owning and running so many pubs been challenging for you, or is it the case that the quality of the offering you have is so good that people just keep coming?
It's been incredibly challenging. I think that lockdown changed everybody of our generation's lives forever, and I think it's a question of how people reacted to it. And so certainly I remember, if we go back to Friday the 20th of March 2020, and the Prime Minister came on the television and said all pubs are going to close this evening. And so in our worst week we lost £600,000 during the lockdown period, and we had lots of colleagues who were gregarious people used to running pubs, and we then had the worst year financially of our whole history, which was then followed by the best year financially, because we were compensated by government, but it took the spring out of our step. All of our landlords, landladies had to throw all their beer away. We had to kind of start again. And so I think we'll all be damaged or changed forever. But the other side of it is that it didn't kill us, so has it made us stronger? I hope so.
It probably has, yeah. Well, I hope it has. It certainly made us stronger as a business. It was like I'm only working with Deborah for 10 years at this, just coming up in 11, but it's the worst we ever experienced, so the one good thing is folk are starting to go back out. You're seeing the footfall, they're starting to enjoy beer and food again, and hopefully it's washing through. That's my gut feeling on it, and we've been chatting about this, Matt, this week.
Indeed. And if I took, it's great I've got you here, if I took Johnny to one Lees pub today before his flight back to Belfast, where would you go?
Well, if I was going on the way to the airport, I'd probably go to Rain Bar on Great Bridgewater Street, because it's on the way. We built it in 1999. It won the Publican Award for the best new pub or bar that year. We've just done a major refurbishment, and probably our biggest mistake was that we waited to do that because it was all ready to happen before lockdown. It's just a great city centre, canal side, wet-led pub in the centre of Manchester, the city that we're based.
Brilliant.
If somebody was thinking of starting a brewery, given the wealth of experience that you have, what tips would you give to them?
Don't. Just buy beer off JW Lees.
Yeah, very good.
Now, my top tip, and this is a serious point, is that you go to the Great British Beer Festival, and I believe it's been cancelled this year, which I think is an enormous error on the judgment of CAMRA, because as soon as you cancel something, actually you could have done something experimental. But anyway, the difference between a tap takeover where a brewery will go to a site near the festival, so to speak, and change all the beers, and a tied pub where a brewery like us, we need tied pubs, otherwise we don't have distribution. So if I was starting a brewery, I would start by building a brew pub, which is a retail outlet for my beers. The best one I've ever seen, I was lucky enough to go to Little Creatures in Perth in Western Australia, which is just brilliant. But I would buy a freehold pub every year, and if we'd done that, we'd have 196 pubs, not 140, because we've had to sell the odd one. But I think that in the UK market, I'm afraid distribution is everything, and having your own pubs to showcase your beers is fundamental to our success.
Yeah, highly agree with that point. Michael, tips in brewing? Any top tips for the brewers or the new generation of brewers that are maybe watching this?
Make sure you enjoy it. It's very difficult or very easy to get sort of stuck into sort of fine detail. But you've got to get out there. You've got to enjoy your product. And make sure it's one that you really enjoy, and make sure you actually love drinking your beer, because you'll be doing it for a long time.
Yeah. Guys, thanks so much. Really, we've got a beautiful brewery tour to share with the audience, and we appreciate your time sincerely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's been fun. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.